I am this guy, and we are reading George Orwell's Animal Farm for a variety of reasons. Obviously, just current events are really rough, and we are in chapter 3. So in chapter 1, basically Major, the hog that lives for a long time, because he lived a long time, he realized that the animals were getting a bad beat, right? They're just being taken advantage of. They're being used. The value that they're providing for others is far outweighs the value that they're keeping for themselves. And of course, on top of everything else, they're being mistreated. Going into chapter 2, we saw that seed come to fruition. The farmer and his farmhands continue to treat the animals poorly, deprive them of meals, not through negligence, not like with any intent to be cruel, just not great folks. And of course that's an allegory for it represents like our politicians and our leaders right now. Of course Orwell was a huge he had some thoughts. So chapter 3 brings us into the point where the farm animals have taken over the manor farm, I believe is what it was called. It is now the animal farm, and they're out in the field bringing in the harvest of hay, which is what the humans would be doing, because they still have to subsist and they're going to do all that stuff. So we also found out that Napoleon, the other pig, one of the two pigs, there's Napoleon and Snowball, maybe isn't the best dude. He we had the leftover milk from the cows, and that was supposed to go back to the cows, but he promised he would take care of it. So that was how chapter 2 ended. So let's just jump right in. We're going to do, let's just jump right in. Chapter 3. How they toiled and sweated to get the hay in, but their efforts were rewarded, for the harvest was an even bigger success than they had hoped. Sometimes the work was hard. The implements had been designed for... Ooh, we have no music. Oh, there it is. Okay. Sometimes the work was hard. The implements had been designed for human beings and not for animals. And it was a great drawback that no animal was able to use any tool that involved standing on his hind legs. But the pigs were so clever, because remember, they're not supposed to you got to walk on 4 legs. 2 legs are bad, according to the commandments that we also learned in chapter 2. If you have not seen that, or you haven't read this, you can go back and watch that. We go over all that. But anyway, the pigs were so clever that they could think of a way around every difficulty. As for the horses, they knew every inch of the field, and in fact understood the business of mowing and raking far better than Jones, the farmer, and his men had ever done. The pigs did not actually work, but directed and supervised the others. With their superior knowledge, it was natural that they should assume the leadership. Boxer and Clover would harness themselves to the cutter or the horse rake. No bits or reins were needed these days, of course. And tramped steadily round and round the field with a pig walking behind and calling out, "Gee-up, comrade," or "Whoa, back, comrade," as the case might be. And every animal down to the humblest worked at turning the hay and gathering it. Even the ducks and hens toiled to and fro all day in the sun, carrying tiny wisps of hay in their beaks. In the end, they finished the harvest in 2 days less time than it had usually taken Jones and his men. So more efficient, better, buy-in from the animals. It's, a lot of things to take away here. Moreover, I love that word, moreover. It was the biggest harvest that the farm had ever seen. There was no wastage whatever. The hens and ducks with their sharp eyes had gathered up the very last stalk, and not an animal on the farm had stolen so much as a mouthful. And that's the premise of socialism, is that, when everyone is getting their needs met and everyone's on the same side, everyone has their needs met and everyone's on the same side. It's supposed to be utopia. But let's keep reading. You'd be shocked at how fast socialism turns into fascism. Sometimes some might say it's the same coin, different sides, but it all comes down to the people taking the extremes, right? Anyway, all through that summer, the work of the farm went like clockwork. The animals were happy as they had never conceived it possible to be. Good for you. Every mouthful of food was an acute, positive pleasure. And now that it was truly their own food, produced by themselves and for themselves, not doled out to them by a grudging master. With the worthless, parasitical human beings gone, there was more for everyone to eat. There was more leisure too, inexperienced though the animals were. Can you relate? You work so much you forget to have fun? How to have fun? They met with many difficulties, for instance. Later in the year, when they harvested the corn, they had to tread it out in the ancient style and blow away the chaff with their breath, since the farm possessed no threshing machine. But the pigs, with their cleverness, and Boxer with his tremendous muscles, Boxer's a horse, always pulled them through. Boxer was the admiration of everybody. Boxer represents the middle class here, the working man. He had been a hard worker even in Jones' time, but now he seemed more like 3 horses than 1. Motivation. There were days when the entire work of the farm seemed to rest on his mighty shoulders. From morning to night, he was pushing and pulling, always at the spot where the work was hardest. He had made an arrangement with one of the cockerels to call him in the mornings half an hour earlier than anyone else, and would put in some volunteer labor at whatever seemed to be most needed, going above and beyond. My man. Before the regular day's work had even begun. His answer to every problem, every setback was, "I will work harder," which he had adopted as his personal motto. Whew. I don't know if that's going to work out for you, friend. Harder is not always the answer. Sometimes slamming your head against the wall is not the way to go. Sometimes going around the wall might be appropriate. Underneath the wall, over the wall, through the wall, but not slamming your head against the wall. Working harder isn't necessarily, in of itself, the solution to all problems. Just saying. But everyone worked according to his capacity. The hens and ducks, for instance, saved 5 bushels of corn at the harvest by gathering up the stray grains. Nobody stole, nobody grumbled over his rations. The quarreling and biting and jealousy, which had been normal features of life in the old days, had almost disappeared. Nobody shirked, well, or almost nobody. Molly, remember she's the horse that likes the ribbons, it was true, was not good at getting up in the mornings, and had a way of leaving work early on the ground. There was a stone in her hoof. Oh, she's calling out sick. And the behavior of the cat was also somewhat peculiar. It was soon noticed that when there was work to be done, the cat could never be found. She would vanish for hours on end and then reappear at meal times, or in the evening after work was over, as though nothing had happened. But she always made such excellent excuses and purred so affectionately that it was impossible not to believe in her good intentions. Possible for you. Old Benjamin, my favorite character, the donkey, seemed quite unchanged since the rebellion. He did his work in the same slow, obstinate way as he had done it in Jones' time, never shirking and never volunteering for extra work either. About the rebellion and its results, he would express no opinion. When asked whether he was not happier now that Jones was gone, he would say only, "Donkeys live a long time. None of you has ever seen a dead donkey." And the others had to be content with this cryptic answer. On Sundays, there was no work. Breakfast was an hour later than usual, and after breakfast there was a ceremony which was observed every week without fail. First came the hoisting of the flag. Snowball had found in the harness room an old green tablecloth of Mrs. Jones and had painted on it a hoof and a horn in white. Sickle and hammer. This was run up the flagstaff in the farmhouse garden every Sunday morning. The flag was green, Snowball explained, to represent the green fields of England, while the hoof and horn signified the future republic of the animals, which would arise when the human race had finally been overthrown. Sucks if you're a human. Oh, coffee. After the hoisting of the flag, all the animals trooped into the big barn for a general assembly, which was known as the meeting. Here the work of the coming week was planned out, and resolutions were put forward and debated. It was always the pigs who put forward the resolutions. The other animals understood how to vote, but could never think of any resolutions on their own. Snowball and Napoleon were by far the most active in the debates, but it was noticed that these two were never in agreement. Whatever suggestion either of them made, the other could be counted on to oppose it. Sounds kind of like now, right? Stupid, really. Even when it was resolved, a thing no one could object to in itself, to set it... Wait. could be counted on to oppose it. Even when it was resolved, a thing no one could object to in and itself, to set aside the small paddock behind the orchard as a home of rest for animals who were past work, there was a stormy debate over the correct retiring age for each class of animal. The meeting always ended with the singing of Beasts of England, and the afternoon was given up to recreation. So a little indoctrination in the morning, little government, little debate, and then some hanging out and having fun on a Sunday. Again, sounds like today. The pigs had set aside the harness room as a headquarters for themselves. Here, in the evenings, they studied blacksmithing, carpentering, and other necessary arts from books which they had brought out of the farmhouse. Snowball also busied himself with organizing the other animals into what he called animal committees. He was indefatigable, blah, 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 at this. He formed the Egg Production Committee for the hens, the Clean Tails League for the cows, the Wild Comrades Re-Education Committee. The object of this was to tame the rats and rabbits, the Wider Wool Movement for the sheep, and various others, besides instituting classes in reading and writing. On the whole, these projects were a failure. The attempt to tame the wild creatures, for instance, broke down almost immediately. They continued to behave very much as before, and when treated with generosity, simply took advantage of it. The cat joined the Re-Education Committee and was very active in it for some days. She was seen one day sitting on a roof and talking to some sparrows who were just out of her reach. She was telling them that all animals were now comrades and that any sparrow who chose could come and perch on her paw. But the sparrows kept their distance. Probably smart. The reading and writing classes, however, were a great success. By the autumn, almost every animal on the farm was literate in some degree. As for the pigs, they could already read and write perfectly. The dogs learned to read fairly well, but were not interested in reading anything except the 7 Commandments. Muriel the goat could read somewhat better than the dogs, and sometimes used to read to the others in the evenings from scraps of newspapers which she found on the rubbish heap. Benjamin could read as well as any pig, but never exercised his faculty. So as far as he knew, he said there was nothing worth reading. Clover learned the whole alphabet, but could not put words together. Boxer could not get beyond the letter D. He would trace out A, B, C, D in the dust with his great hoof, and then would stand staring at the letters with his ears back, sometimes shaking his forelock, trying with all his might to remember what came next, and never succeeding. On several occasions, indeed, he did learn E, F, G, H, but by the time he knew them, it was always discovered that he had forgotten A, B, C, and D. Finally, he decided to be content with the first 4 letters and used to write them out once or twice every day to refresh his memory. Molly refused to learn any but the 6 letters which spelt her own name. Vain! What's that? Are you so vain? What's that old song? Are you so vain? Anyway, my wife would know. She would form these very neatly out of pieces of twig and would then decorate them with a flower or two and walk round them admiring them. None of the other animals on the farm could get further than the letter A. It was also found that the stupider animals, such as the sheep, hens, and ducks, were unable to learn the 7 Commandments by heart. After much thought, Snowball declared that the 7 Commandments could in effect be reduced to a single maxim. Namely, and this is important, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. This, he said, contained the essential principle of animalism. Whoever had thoroughly grasped it would be safe from human influences. The birds at first objected, since it seemed to them that they also had 2 legs, but Snowball proved to them that this was not so. A bird's wing, comrades, he said, is an organ of propulsion and not of manipulation. It should therefore be regarded as a leg. The distinguishing mark of man is the hand, the instrument with which he does all his mischief. The birds did not understand Snowball's long words, but they accepted his explanation nonetheless, and all the humbler animals set to work to learn the new maxim by heart. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad was inscribed on the end wall of the barn, above the 7 Commandments and in bigger letters. Nuance, that's how you start to lose nuance. Reduce things to sound bites and you lose the weight and the meaning behind it, which is what's happening here. You see it happen a lot. When they had once got it by heart, the sheep developed a great liking for this maxim, and often as they lay in the field, they would all start bleating, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, and keep it up for hours on end, never growing tired of it. They're sheep. You know when like right-wing folks, you're a sheep, you're a sheeple, you're a sheep person. This is where that comes from, and I bet you half of them don't even know that. Anyway, I'm going to get hate mail. That's fine. Napoleon took no interest in Snowball's committees. He said that the education of the young was more important than anything that could be done for those who are already grown up. It happened that Jessie and Bluebell had both whelped soon after the hay harvest, giving birth between them to 9 sturdy puppies. So let's read that again. It's important. Napoleon took no interest in Snowball's committees. He said that the education of the young was more important than anything that could be done for those who are already grown up. It's because he wants to shape their thinking. Do you get, like, you understand that, right? Like, he doesn't care about helping any of the adults now. He wants to shape the future of the children because that's how you retain power. So this is indoctrination, by the way. It happens that Jessie and Bluebell had both whelped soon after the hay harvest, giving birth between them to 9 sturdy puppies. And the dogs in this book are representative of like a military force or a police force. So you can, anyway, hopefully you guys are putting it together. As soon as they were weaned, Napoleon took them away from their mothers, saying that he would make himself responsible for their education. He took them up into a loft which could only be reached by a ladder from the harness room, and there kept them in such seclusion that the rest of the farm soon forgot their existence. Come on. Red flag, red flag, red flag. Anybody who tries to control what people can see and hear generally do not have good intentions. And when I say generally, I mean most of the time, with rare exception. So I'm very upset with what's happening in... you don't get to take books out without due process. There's a process, and you guys are acting like crazy people, and I need you to stop. Okay? Anyway, the mystery of where the milk went to was soon cleared up. It was mixed every day into the pig's mash. The early apples were now ripening, and the grass of the orchard was littered with windfalls. The animals had assumed as a matter of course that these would be shared out equally. One day, however, the order went forth that all the windfalls were to be collected and brought to the harness room for the use of the pigs. At this, some of the other animals murmured, but it was no use. All the pigs were in full agreement on this point, even Snowball, who's supposed to give a shit, and Napoleon. Squealer was sent to make the necessary explanation to the others. "Comrades," he cried, "you do not imagine, I hope, that we pigs are doing this in a spirit of selfishness and privilege. Huh? Many of us actually dislike milk and apples. I dislike them myself. Our sole object in taking these things is to preserve our health. Milk and apples, and this has of course been proved by science, comrades, contain substances absolutely necessary to the well-being of a pig. Hydrochlorothiazide. We pigs are brain workers. The whole management and organization of this farm depend on us. Day and night we are watching over your welfare. It is for your sake that we drink that milk and eat those apples. Do you know what would happen if we pigs failed in our duty? Yeah, someone else would do it. Jones would come back. He's like, you have to be afraid of something, right? This is how this works. This is how political parties take control. Jones would come back. Yes. Oh, the border wall. Oh, immigrants. Oh, I'm sorry. We're in Animal Farm. Do you know what would happen if the pigs failed in our duty? Jones would come back. Yes, Jones would come back. Surely, comrades, cried Squealer, almost pleadingly, skipping from side to side and whisking his tail. Surely, there is no one among you who wants to see Jones come back. Give me a fucking break. I really get irritated at politics because, like, this sentence is what I see all the time. Be afraid of this, be afraid of that. And then the sad thing is that when you become afraid of everything, it's like the boy who cries wolf. And then when something comes along that you actually should be afraid of, that is actually terrifying and that can actually change your life, y'all are so wrapped up in your head mentally you can't see the forest through the trees because you've fallen for all of Napoleon's bullshit. So there you go. let's read the last paragraph. Now, if there was one thing that the animals were completely certain of, it was that they did not want Jones back. You see the fear? See how it grips them? See how it changes their actions? It's stupid. Jones, come on now. When it was put to them in this light, they had no more to say, because what could they say? The importance of keeping the pigs in good health was all too obvious. So it was agreed without further argument that the milk and the windfall apples and also the main crop of apples, when they ripen, should be reserved for the pigs alone. It only took a chapter for these pigs to blow it. So, but anyway, that is chapter 3. That is what I wanted to do. I don't have a ton of extra stuff to say and talk about today, so we're just going to wrap this up pretty quick. If there were a bunch of comments, I do apologize for not seeing them. I don't have my second monitor right now, which is what allows me to check all that. We will be getting that fixed, and we'll kind of have more of an interactive experience as we move forward. I do cut these up, and I throw these on YouTube and other places later. So, yeah, just, if you want to join me, we're going to do this and we're going to do other stuff. We do a lot of photography and editing and different things. So if you want to hang out, I'm going to try to do the live stuff here and then kick it out to all the other places instead of doing live elsewhere and just ignoring this platform. So, yeah. Hey, wait, is this over here? Oh, you're just an ad. No thanks. All right. So, that's all I got. Love your faces. Hope I'll see you soon.